I stand in the shadow of the auditorium pillars, watching Sophia Chen accept her valedictorian award, and I know every word of her speech because I wrote it for her, just like I wrote everything else that made her shine. The irony burns through me as she quotes the very poem I composed about unrequited love, the one she claimed was too complex for her to understand when I first showed it to her 3 years ago. But now she delivers it perfectly to the applause of hundreds, including Marcus Way, the business heir who thinks these beautiful words came from her brilliant mind. "Thank you for everything, David," she had whispered to me just an hour ago, her hand briefly touching my arm as she prepared to walk across that stage. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. You're such a good friend." Friend. After 3 years of writing her essays, her love letters to Marcus, her scholarship applications, her poetry submissions that won her awards and recognition, after watching her build a literary reputation on the foundation of my anonymous words, I am still just her helpful friend with better English skills. Marcus Way approaches the stage now, that same confident smile that has haunted my dreams for years, and I watch as he presents Sophia with a bouquet of white roses, each flower representing another love letter I wrote in his name, another declaration of passion I crafted for him to give her while I stood in the background, invisible and forgotten. The crowd cheers as they embrace, the perfect golden couple everyone always knew they would become, and I feel something cold and final settle in my chest because I know what comes next. The memory crashes over me like ice water as I remember how it all began 3 years ago, freshman orientation week when Sophia Chen first approached me in the English department commons, her designer bag perfectly coordinated with her carefully styled hair, everything about her screaming old money privilege, while I clutched my secondhand textbooks and tried not to let my scholarship kid status show too obviously. "You're David Zhang, right? The one who scored perfect on the literature entrance exam?" Her smile had been radiant, warm, seemingly genuine as she slid into the seat across from me in the library. "I heard Professor Williams mention your essay on contemporary poetry analysis. I'm Sophia, by the way, Sophia Chen." As if everyone didn't already know who she was, the heiress to Chen International, the girl whose family donated entire wings to this university. What I didn't understand then, what my naive 18-year-old heart couldn't comprehend, was that Sophia Chen had already done her research, had already identified me as the perfect tool for her grand plan. She knew Marcus Way would be starting business school that fall, knew his family's corporation needed to partner with hers, knew that the shy business heir had a secret weakness for literature and poetry that his pragmatic father would never understand or approve of. "I'm struggling with Professor Williams' assignment," she had confessed that first day, her dark eyes wide with what I thought was genuine vulnerability. "Could you maybe help me understand the symbolism in this poem? I'd be so grateful." And I, helplessly infatuated with this goddess who actually seemed to notice my existence, had agreed immediately, spending hours explaining metaphors and literary devices, helping her craft responses that would impress our demanding professor. But helping with homework soon became writing her essays entirely, and writing essays became composing love letters when she casually mentioned that Marcus Way had started attending the poetry club meetings where she'd been reading her work. "He's so sophisticated," she would sigh dreamily. "He understands literature in a way most business students don't. I think he might like me, but I'm not good with words like you are, David. Could you help me write something that would catch his attention?" Looking back now, I can see how carefully orchestrated it all was, how she gradually increased my involvement while making me feel essential, needed, valued. She would show me Marcus's texts and emails, analyzing every word like we were decoding ancient manuscripts, asking me to help her respond in ways that would deepen his interest. "You understand the male mind so much better than I do," she would say, and I would glow with pride even as I wrote love letters for another man in my own handwriting. The worst part was how she made me complicit in my own heartbreak, how she would seek my advice about their relationship as if I were her closest confidant rather than the architect of their romance. "Marcus wrote me this beautiful email about eternal love," she would tell me, showing me words I had crafted the night before, and I would nod and smile and tell her how lucky she was while my heart shattered a little more each time. "David, you're so talented at understanding people's emotions," she would say, leaning closer across the library table where we spent our evenings, her perfume expensive and intoxicating, her gratitude like a drug I couldn't refuse. "When you write these letters, it's like you can see directly into Marcus's soul and know exactly what he needs to hear. I could never create something so beautiful on my own." And I would bask in her praise, would work even harder to craft the perfect romantic declaration, would stay up until 3 in the morning polishing metaphors and refining emotional crescendos, all so that Marcus Way could copy my words into his own handwriting and make Sophia Chen fall deeper in love with my stolen poetry. I was the ghostwriter of their entire relationship, the invisible architect of their public romance, the fool who believed that being essential made me valued. The phone call came during finals week of junior year, while I was hunched over my laptop in Sophia's dorm room, writing what would become Marcus's proposal speech. The words flowing from my fingers like poison as I crafted the perfect romantic declaration for another man to claim as his own. David, you need to come home immediately. My mother's voice sounded strange, distant, like she was speaking from the bottom of a well. Your father. There's been an accident at the factory. He's in the hospital. I should have left immediately, should have packed my bags and caught the first bus home to see my family, but Sophia was crying, genuine tears streaming down her perfect face as she begged me not to abandon her during the most important moment of her relationship. Please, David, I know this is terrible timing, but Marcus is going to propose tomorrow night at the spring formal. And if the speech isn't perfect, if I don't respond the right way, everything we've worked for will be ruined. You're the only one who understands how important this is. So I stayed. I chose her tears over my mother's strained voice, her dreams over my family's crisis, and I spent that night perfecting Marcus Way's proposal while my father lay in intensive care 300 miles away. The speech was beautiful, eloquent, everything a woman could want to hear, and I watched through live stream as Marcus delivered my words flawlessly in the university's grand ballroom, watched Sophia's face light up with joy as she accepted the ring I had helped him choose, the proposal I had crafted, the future I had architected for them. My father died 2 days later while I was still celebrating Sophia's engagement, still basking in her grateful hugs and promises that she would never forget how much I had done for her. Heart attack, the doctors said, brought on by the stress of losing the factory job he'd worked for 20 years, the financial pressure of my university tuition, the worry about his family's future that I had been too distracted to notice or help alleviate. The funeral was small, attended mostly by his former coworkers and a few neighbors, and I stood there in my only black suit, the one I'd bought for Sophia's formal events, listening to the pastor talk about my father's dedication to his family while knowing I had failed him in his final moments. My mother didn't say much during those awful days, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes, the knowledge that her son had chosen his infatuation over his family when it mattered most. He was so proud of your writing, she told me quietly as we cleaned out his things. He saved every story you published in the school newspaper, every award certificate. He never understood why you stopped submitting your own work to contests. Because I was too busy writing for someone else, I wanted to tell her, too busy making another woman shine while my own light dimmed to nothing. Senior year brought the crushing realization that I had built my entire identity around being useful to Sophia Chen, and now that she was engaged to Marcus Way, now that their relationship was secure and their families were planning merger celebrations disguised as weddings, I had become expendable, an embarrassing reminder of their manufactured romance. The end came not with dramatic confrontation but with slow, cold dismissal, like watching ice form over a river until you realize you can no longer reach the water beneath. Sophia's messages became shorter, her requests for help less frequent, her acknowledgments of my assistance perfunctory at best. Thanks, Dee. She would text after I spent hours perfecting her senior thesis, the project that would determine her graduation honors and future graduate school prospects. But the real knife came during spring semester when I discovered she had been telling people that Marcus was helping her with her writing now, that her literary improvement was due to his influence and guidance rather than my anonymous labor. She was already rewriting history, erasing my contributions, preparing for a future where David Zong, the scholarship student with better English, had never existed in their perfect love story. I think it's time for you to focus on your own future, she told me one afternoon in March, her engagement ring catching the light as she gestured vaguely toward my laptop. You're graduating soon? And you should really start working on your own writing again, instead of spending so much time helping others. The dismissal was gentle but final, delivered with the same sweet smile she had used to ask for my help 3 years earlier. I wanted to rage, to demand recognition, to tell her exactly how much of her success belonged to me, but what was the point? I had no proof, no evidence of my contributions beyond memories, and saved drafts that would look like pathetic forgery attempts if I ever tried to use them. She owned the reputation, the awards, the relationship, the future, and I owned nothing but the knowledge of my own foolishness. The graduation ceremony felt like a funeral for my youth, my dreams, my naive belief that talent and hard work would eventually be recognized and rewarded. I watched Sophia deliver the valedictorian speech I had written, watched Marcus beam with pride at his brilliant fiancée, watched their families celebrate the merger that would make both corporations stronger, all built on the foundation of words I had given away for free. That night, alone in my empty dorm room while everyone else celebrated at parties I hadn't been invited to, I wrote one final letter, the only honest thing I had written in years. Not a love letter for Marcus to claim, not an essay for Sophia to submit, but a goodbye to the girl who had used my words to build her dreams while I forgot how to dream for myself. Dear Sophia, I wrote, my hands shaking as I finally allowed myself to tell the truth. I loved you with every word I wrote, every poem I crafted, every sentence I polished until it gleamed with false perfection. I gave you my voice because I thought love meant sacrifice, thought devotion meant disappearing so completely that even I forgot who I was beneath all the borrowed brilliance you wore so effortlessly. But love without recognition isn't love at all, it's just elaborate suicide, the slow dissolution of self until nothing remains but the echo of someone else's applause. You never loved me. You loved what I could create for you, and when my usefulness expired, so did I. Thank you for teaching me the difference between being valued and being used. I won't make this mistake again, because there won't be an again. Goodbye, David. I never sent the letter. Instead, I walked to the bridge that spanned the river running through campus, the same bridge where Sophia and Marcus had their engagement photos taken, and I thought about how easy it would be to simply stop existing, to become as invisible in death as I had been in life. The water looked black and welcoming in the moonlight, promising rest from the exhaustion of loving someone who saw me only as a useful tool. The last thing I remember is the sound of rushing water and the taste of regret, bitter and overwhelming, as I realized I had wasted my entire university career writing other people's stories while my own remained unwritten, unlived, and now would remain forever unfinished. I opened my eyes and I am 18 again, sitting in the university library on that September afternoon when everything changed. When Sophia Chen first approached me with her designer smile and carefully planned vulnerability, and I know immediately that this is not a dream because the knowledge burns through me like acid. 4 years of memories that haven't happened yet. 4 years of mistakes I now have the power to unmake. The clock on the library wall reads 2:47 p.m., and I know that in exactly 3 minutes, Sophia will walk through those doors, will scan the room until she spots me hunched over my poetry notebook, will approach with that practiced hesitation that I once thought was genuine nervousness, but now recognize as calculated manipulation. I can feel the weight of her future requests in my chest, the pressure of all those love letters and essays and speeches that turned my words into her weapons, and I understand with crystal clarity that this moment, this exact moment, is my chance to choose differently. My hands are shaking as I look down at the poem I was writing, the one about unrequited love that Sophia will claim as her own in the timeline I've escaped, the one that will help her catch Marcus Way's attention and begin their manufactured romance. The verses stare back at me like evidence of my own stupidity, and I feel a cold fury building in my chest because I remember now how she looked at Marcus when she thought no one was watching, how her eyes lit up not with love but with calculation, how she assessed his worth not in terms of compatibility but in terms of corporate merger potential. But I also remember my father's funeral, remember my mother's disappointed silence, remember the crushing weight of discovering that I had sacrificed everything real for something entirely artificial, and I make my decision just as the library doors swing open and Sophia Chen walks in, right on schedule, her target already spotted and her approach already planned. This time, I will not be her pen. She approaches exactly as I remember, that perfect blend of confidence and manufactured vulnerability that once made my heart race and now makes my stomach turn. And when she slides into the seat across from me with that radiant smile, I close my poetry notebook and look at her with eyes that have seen too much. You're David Zhang, right? The one who scored perfect on the literature entrance exam? The words are identical, the delivery flawless, and for a moment I am struck by how thoroughly she had researched me, how completely she had planned this seemingly casual encounter. I'm busy, I say quietly, and I watch her confident expression flicker with confusion because this is not how our script is supposed to go. In her carefully planned scenario, I should be flattered by her attention, eager to help, grateful for any crumb of acknowledgement from the untouchable Sophia Chen. She recovers quickly. I'll give her that, leaning forward with concern that looks almost genuine if you don't know to watch for the calculation behind her eyes. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm Sophia, by the way. Sophia Chen. I was just hoping you might help me with Professor Williams' assignment. I heard you're incredibly talented with poetry analysis. I'm sure you'll figure it out, I reply, gathering my books with deliberate slowness. You seem like a very resourceful person. The word hangs between us like a challenge, and I see something sharp flash across her features before she smooths it away. This is not the David Zhang she studied, not the lonely scholarship student who would be grateful for any attention from someone of her social standing. This David Zhang sees through her performance, recognizes her manipulation, and refuses to participate in his own exploitation. Maybe another time then, she says, but there's steel in her voice now, the tone of someone accustomed to getting what she wants. I'm sure we'll see each other around campus. I'm sure we will. I agree, standing and shouldering my backpack. But just so we're clear, Sophia Chen, I don't write other people's stories anymore. I'm too busy living my own. I walk away without looking back, but I can feel her stare burning into my shoulders, can sense her recalculating her approach, already planning new angles of attack. She won't give up easily. I know that much about her, but for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I have said no to Sophia Chen, and the freedom feels like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. That evening, I call my parents for the first time since starting university. Really call them, not the perfunctory check-ins I managed between writing sessions for Sophia's benefit. My father's voice sounds tired but pleased as he tells me about his work at the factory, about the challenges they're facing with new management, about the pride he feels knowing his son is studying literature at such a prestigious university. I'm thinking about entering some writing contests. I tell him, words I never spoke in my previous life because I was too busy crafting other people's success. There's a national poetry competition for undergraduate students. The deadline is next month. That's wonderful, son, he says, and I can hear the genuine excitement in his voice. Your mother will be so proud. We both will. You have such a gift with words. A gift I wasted once already, but not again. This time, my words will serve my own dreams, my own future, my own family's financial security. This time, when Sophia Chen looks for a ghostwriter to make her shine, when Marcus Wei needs someone to craft his romantic declarations, they will have to find another fool willing to surrender his voice for their benefit. I have been reborn not just in body but in purpose, and I will not make the same mistakes twice. The poetry contest becomes my first act of rebellion against the future I escaped, my declaration that David Zhang's words belong to David Zhang alone. I spend the weeks following my encounter with Sophia, crafting verses that burn with authentic emotion, drawing from pain I shouldn't technically remember yet, writing about loss and manipulation and the cost of giving away pieces of yourself until nothing remains. The Ghostwriter is what I title my submission, a series of interconnected poems about invisibility and exploitation, about brilliant minds hidden behind prettier faces, about the hollow satisfaction of watching others succeed with your stolen words. The metaphors come easily because I lived them once already, and when I submit the collection to the National Undergraduate Poetry Competition, I do so with the confidence of someone who knows exactly how powerful authentic voice can be. Meanwhile, Sophia continues her attempts to recruit me, growing more desperate and less subtle with each failed approach. She shows up at my study spots with increasingly elaborate pretenses, claims she needs tutoring for classes I know she's already mastering, even goes so far as to suggest we start a study group that would inevitably become my unpaid writing service for her benefit. I really think we could help each other, she insists one afternoon in October, cornering me outside the English department building. You're so talented, and I have connections that could really benefit your career. My family knows publishers, literary agents, people who could open doors for you. The offer is tempting, I'll admit, especially since I remember how difficult it was to break into publishing as an unknown student from a working-class background. But I also remember how those same connections disappeared the moment I was no longer useful, how quickly Sophia discarded me once her relationship with Marcus was secure. That's generous, I tell her, but I prefer to build my career on my own merit. Earned success tends to be more sustainable. She flinches at the implication, understanding perfectly that I see through her quid pro quo arrangement, that I recognize the difference between genuine mentorship and transactional exploitation. After that conversation, her attempts become less frequent but more aggressive, complaints to mutual friends about my unfriendliness, subtle suggestions that I think I'm too good for her help. carefully planted rumors about my antisocial tendencies. But I've also been building real relationships, connecting with classmates and professors who value talent over social climbing, who appreciate authentic work over polished performance. My poetry professor, Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell, becomes a genuine mentor after reading my early drafts, offering guidance that doesn't come with strings attached or hidden agendas. You have a distinctive voice, she tells me during office hours. Raw, honest, uncompromising. Don't let anyone convince you to soften it for mass appeal. The world needs writers who tell difficult truths. Through Dr. Hartwell, I meet other serious writers, students who gather weekly to workshop their pieces and discuss craft rather than social strategy. Among them is Emma Sullivan, a quiet transfer student from a small liberal arts college who writes fiction with the same unflinching honesty I try to achieve in poetry. She's the daughter of a single mother who works 3 jobs, scholarship kid like me, and when she reads her stories aloud in workshop, her words carry the weight of lived experience rather than borrowed observation. Your poems remind me of home, she tells me after one session. Not the nostalgic, romanticized version people like to write about, but the real thing, the way working class life actually feels. We start studying together, writing together, sharing drafts and feedback without keeping score of who owes whom what favor. It's a revelation after years of transactional relationships. This partnership built on mutual respect and genuine creative connection rather than exploitation and manipulation. When the poetry contest results are announced in November, I don't just win the undergraduate division. I place second overall, beating graduate students and even some faculty submissions. The 5-0 prize money is more than my family has ever seen in one place, but more importantly, the recognition comes with publication opportunities and genuine industry attention. David Zhang represents the next generation of American poetry, the judge's statement reads. His work combines classical, technical skill with urgent contemporary themes, exploring the hidden costs of success in our achievement, obsessed culture. The local newspaper runs a feature article about my win, complete with quotes from Dr. Hartwell and photos of me reading at the campus literary magazine launch. For the first time in my academic career, my name is attached to my own words, my own success, my own future possibilities. I send the article to my parents, along with a check for half the prize money to help with my father's medical bills from a recent factory injury bills. I remember from my previous life but can now help address before they become overwhelming debt. We're so proud of you, my mother says when she calls, tears obvious in her voice. Your father showed the article to everyone at work. He carries a copy in his wallet. This is what authentic success feels like, I realize. Not the hollow satisfaction of watching others claim credit for my work, but the solid foundation of recognition earned through my own efforts, shared with the people who actually matter. The Spring Literary Symposium arrives like a perfectly set stage for the drama I've been anticipating. The kind of high-profile university event where reputations are made and destroyed under the careful scrutiny of professors, industry professionals, and social media documentation. This year's theme is authenticity in contemporary literature, and the irony is so perfect I almost believe the universe is conspiring to help me. Sophia has been selected as one of the student speakers, invited to present on finding your voice in academic writing based on her impressive portfolio of essays and creative pieces work that I know intimately because I wrote most of it in my previous life. She's spent weeks preparing for this moment, practicing her presentation, networking with the visiting publishers and literary agents who will be in attendance. What she doesn't know is that I've been selected as the other undergraduate speaker, chosen to present my award-winning poetry and discuss my creative process. The symposium organizers thought it would be interesting to contrast our different approaches to literature, her polished, academic style versus my raw, authentic voice. The delicious irony is that we'll be presenting back-to-back, her manufactured persona followed immediately by the genuine article, her borrowed eloquence contrasted with words that actually belong to their speaker. I arrive at the symposium early, watching the elegant crowd gather in the university's grandest lecture hall, recognizing professors and industry professionals whose approval Sophia has been desperately seeking. She's there too, stunning in a designer dress that probably costs more than my semester's textbooks, holding court with several literary agents who seem charmed by her polished presentation skills. Marcus Way stands beside her like a devoted accessory, nodding along as she discusses her creative evolution and her journey toward finding her authentic voice. He looks exactly as I remember, handsome, wealthy, completely convinced of his own sophistication, utterly unaware that his girlfriend's literary reputation is built on stolen words. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Hartwell announces from the podium, we're delighted to begin today's symposium with two of our most promising undergraduate writers. First, we'll hear from Sophia Chen, our department's rising star in academic writing, followed by David Zhang, this year's National Poetry Competition winner. Sophia takes the stage with practiced confidence, her presentation slides perfectly formatted, her speaking points clearly rehearsed. She begins with an elegant introduction about the importance of authentic voice in literature, about the courage required to write from personal experience, about the responsibility writers have to represent truth rather than artifice. When I first started writing seriously, she says, her voice carrying beautifully across the hushed auditorium, I struggled to find my own voice. I was tempted to imitate the writers I admired, to write what I thought professors wanted to hear rather than what I genuinely felt. The irony burns through me like acid as I listen to her describe a creative journey that never actually happened. Character development she never experienced, artistic growth that belonged entirely to someone else. She quotes extensively from her poetry portfolio analyzing metaphors and symbols I crafted while she was busy calculating social advantages. This particular piece, she says, displaying one of my poems on the screen behind her, emerged from a period of deep personal reflection about identity and authenticity. The metaphor of the ghostwriter represents the way we sometimes hide our true selves behind masks we think others will find more acceptable. I almost laugh out loud at the audacity of it, watching her analyze my own work for an audience that includes the very professors who will soon hear me discuss the same themes from the perspective of someone who actually lived them. She's giving my artistic statement, presenting my creative process, claiming my intellectual property with the kind of casual confidence that only comes from years of successful theft. When she concludes to enthusiastic applause, she looks directly at me in the front row and smiles, a tiny triumphant expression that says she knows exactly what she's doing, knows that I recognize my own words coming from her mouth, and knows there's nothing I can do about it because who would believe the scholarship student over the professor's favorite? But she's calculated wrong this time, because this David Zhang isn't the naive boy who gave away his voice for a few grateful smiles. This David Zhang has spent months building genuine relationships, establishing his own reputation, creating an independent body of work that proves his talent doesn't need her amplification. Thank you, Sophia, for that insightful presentation, Dr. Ford, Hartwell says. And now, David Zhang will discuss his award-winning collection, The Ghostwriter, and the creative process behind authentic voice. I take the stage carrying nothing but a slim notebook, no PowerPoint slides or carefully rehearsed talking points, just the poems themselves and the lived experience that created them. The title of my collection hangs in the air like an accusation, and I see Sophia's confident expression flicker with the first hint of uncertainty. Thank you, Dr. Hartwell, I begin, opening my notebook to the first poem. Before I discuss my creative process, I think it's important to address what authentic voice actually means, particularly in an academic environment where intellectual property and creative ownership can become complicated. The audience leans forward, sensing something electric in the atmosphere, and I can see Sophia shifting uncomfortably in her front row seat. Marcus looks confused, probably wondering why I'm staring directly at his girlfriend while I speak about creative theft and artistic authenticity. My collection, The Ghostwriter, explores the experience of invisibility, of watching your own words succeed while you remain unrecognized, of the peculiar pain that comes from seeing someone else claim credit for your most personal creative expressions. I read the opening poem slowly, letting each line land with deliberate weight, and I watch recognition dawn on several professors' faces as they realize I'm describing a scenario that sounds remarkably familiar, remarkably similar to the presentation they just witnessed. The metaphor of the ghostwriter, I continue, isn't just about professional writing services or academic collaboration. It's about the more insidious forms of intellectual theft that happen when talented but financially disadvantaged students find themselves exploited by wealthier classmates who understand that success in academia often depends more on connections than on genuine ability. The tension in the room is becoming palpable now, and I can see Sophia's face draining of color as she begins to understand exactly what's happening, exactly how thoroughly she's been exposed. True authentic voice, I conclude, can only emerge when writers take responsibility for their own words, when they stop hiding behind borrowed brilliance and start speaking from their own lived experience. Anything else is just elaborate plagiarism dressed up as collaboration. The applause that follows is different from what Sophia received, more thoughtful, more questioning, charged with the electricity of revelation. Several professors are already taking notes, already beginning the process of investigation that will unravel Sophia's carefully constructed reputation. Dr. Hartwell calls me into her office the morning after the symposium, not to reprimand me, but to quietly confirm what she already suspected based on years of observing students and recognizing authentic voice versus borrowed brilliance. I've been teaching for 23 years, she tells me, and I've learned to spot the difference between students who grow into their talent and students who suddenly appear fully formed without any evidence of developmental process. She doesn't ask me directly about Sophia's plagiarism, doesn't demand proof or evidence, but she makes it clear that certain irregularities will be investigated through proper channels, certain portfolios will be subjected to more rigorous authentication processes, certain students will find their academic futures dependent on their ability to produce original work under supervised conditions. More importantly, she connects me with her network of industry professionals who attended the symposium, editors and publishers who were impressed not just by my poetry but by my integrity, my willingness to speak difficult truths even when it might be professionally disadvantageous. Authenticity is rare in this business, one of the visiting agents tells me. Most young writers are so eager to please that they lose their distinctive voice before they even find it. You've done the opposite. But while my professional prospects flourish, I also make sure to address the personal relationships that suffered in my previous life due to my obsession with helping Sophia. I start calling my parents weekly, not just dutiful check-ins, but real conversations about their lives, their concerns, their dreams for retirement that always seemed impossibly distant. Dad, I say during one of these calls, I've been thinking about your situation at the factory. Have you considered talking to a union representative about the safety violations you mentioned? In my previous life, my father's accident happened because he was afraid to report dangerous working conditions, afraid that complaining might cost him his job and my university tuition. This time, armed with knowledge of what's coming and money from my poetry prize, I can help him navigate the situation before tragedy strikes. I know you don't want to make waves, I continue, but worker safety laws exist for a reason. And if they retaliate against you for following proper protocols, that's wrongful termination. I've been researching employment lawyers, and many of them work on contingency. It takes several conversations, but eventually my father agrees to document the safety issues and file the appropriate reports with state regulators. More importantly, I send him half of my poetry prize money with strict instructions to see a doctor about the chest pains he's been ignoring, the early warning signs I missed the first time around. You don't need to worry about my tuition, I tell him firmly. I'm applying for additional scholarships, and Dr. Hartwell thinks I have a good chance at the departmental fellowship for next year. Your health is more important than my degree. The medical tests reveal early-stage heart disease, entirely treatable with medication and lifestyle changes, but potentially fatal if left unaddressed. When my father calls to thank me for pushing him to see the doctor, his voice breaks with emotion. You saved my life, son, he says simply. The doctor said another year of ignoring those symptoms could have been catastrophic. This is what authentic success looks like, I realize as I listen to my father's healthy voice over the phone, as I read updates from Dr. Hartwell about my fellowship application, as I review the portfolio I'm building with words that actually belong to me. Not the hollow victory of watching others claim credit for my work, but the solid satisfaction of using my talents to protect the people I love while building a foundation for genuine long-term achievement. Emma Sullivan becomes my closest collaborator during this period, not because I need her help to succeed, but because our partnership represents everything my relationship with Sophia pretended to be, but never was: mutual respect, shared creative vision, equal contribution, and recognition. We start co-editing the university's literary magazine, transforming it from a showcase for professor favorites into a genuine platform for student voices that might otherwise remain unheard. I love how your poems don't apologize for being working class, Emma tells me as we review submissions for the spring issue. So much student writing tries to sound sophisticated by avoiding any mention of financial struggle or family responsibility. Your work proves that authentic voice doesn't require pretentious vocabulary. Through our editorial work, we discover other students whose talent has been overlooked because they lack the social connections or polished presentation skills that typically determine academic success. Marcus Chen, no relation to Sophia, despite the shared surname, writes brilliant short fiction about immigrant family dynamics but has been repeatedly rejected from workshop courses because his English still carries traces of his childhood Korean. Sarah Williams creates haunting poetry about rural poverty, but struggles in workshop discussions because her accent marks her as uneducated in the eyes of professors who equate sophistication with specific regional speech patterns. Emma and I make sure their work appears prominently in our magazine, provide them with the kind of mentorship and support I wish I had received as a freshman, connect them with faculty members who value substance over style. It's the opposite of Sophia's networking strategy, which focused on climbing ladders and impressing gatekeepers. Our approach builds horizontal connections among students who understand that talent comes in many forms and deserves recognition regardless of its packaging. When Marcus Chen wins a major fiction prize for a story we published about generational trauma and cultural assimilation, he credits our magazine with giving him the confidence to submit his work beyond campus. Seeing my words in print, he says, surrounded by other stories that didn't try to hide their origins or apologize for their perspectives, made me understand that my voice had value exactly as it was. By spring semester, I'm no longer the invisible scholarship student grateful for any acknowledgement from my social betters. I'm a recognized voice in the department, a writer whose work speaks for itself, a collaborator who builds success rather than borrowing it, and most importantly, a son who has learned to use his talents to protect and support his family rather than abandoning them for someone else's dreams. Graduation arrives not as an ending but as a launching pad for the career I should have been building all along, the reputation I earned through my own efforts rather than someone else's reflected glory. The fellowship for graduate school comes through officially in April, along with a teaching assistantship that will cover my expenses while I complete my Master of Fine Arts degree. More importantly, 3 different literary agents express interest in representing my work after reading my expanded poetry collection, now titled Authentic Voices, and featuring not just my own pieces but collaborative works with Emma and our magazine contributors. The collection tells the story of working-class writers finding their place in academic spaces that weren't designed for them, claiming intellectual territory through talent and persistence rather than inherited privilege. This is exactly the kind of authentic voice the literary world needs right now, my future agent tells me during our first phone conversation. Publishers are finally recognizing that readers want real experiences, not polished artifice. Your collection speaks to a generation of students who've been told their backgrounds disqualify them from serious literary consideration. The advance for my book is modest but meaningful enough to help my parents pay off their medical debt, enough to establish a small scholarship fund for working-class students in the English department, enough to prove that authentic success can create opportunities for others rather than just personal advancement. Emma and I officially start dating the week after graduation, though we've been functioning as creative and emotional partners for months without acknowledging the romantic undertones of our collaboration. Our relationship builds naturally from shared values and mutual respect rather than calculated advantage or desperate infatuation. And when she kisses me for the first time outside the coffee shop, where we've spent countless hours editing and writing together, it feels like the most honest moment of my entire life. I've been waiting for you to finish processing your past, she tells me with characteristic directness. I could see you were still healing from something, still learning to trust your own instincts about people. I didn't want to rush that process. She knows about Sophia, not the supernatural details of my rebirth, but the natural story of exploitation and recovery that makes sense within normal human experience. Emma understands what it means to be used for your talents while remaining invisible as a person, having experienced her own version of academic exploitation before transferring to our university. The difference, she says, is that you learn to recognize your worth and demand appropriate recognition. Some people spend their whole lives giving away pieces of themselves and never understand why they feel empty. Our engagement happens quietly, naturally, during a writing retreat the summer after graduation. No dramatic proposals or public declarations, just 2 people who've built something genuine together deciding to make it official and permanent. Sophia's academic career implodes spectacularly when the department's investigation into her portfolio reveals extensive plagiarism dating back to freshman year. She's expelled 3 weeks before graduation, her literature awards rescinded, her graduate school acceptances withdrawn. Marcus Way breaks their engagement immediately, claiming he was deceived about her character and intellectual abilities. Last I heard, she was working at her family's company in a junior marketing position, her literary aspirations permanently destroyed by her own greed and dishonesty. Marcus, meanwhile, graduated business school and married someone more suitable to his social climbing ambitions, though rumor has it his new wife was chosen entirely by his parents for strategic corporate reasons. The poetic justice satisfies me briefly, but I find I don't need to dwell on their failures to feel successful in my own life. Emma and I marry this summer after completing our graduate degrees, a small ceremony attended by our families and the community of writers we've built together over the years. Our wedding features readings from our collaborative works, vows we wrote together, and promises to continue supporting each other's creative growth while building something larger than individual achievement. We both land teaching positions at regional universities, jobs that allow us to mentor the next generation of authentic voices while continuing our own creative work. Our first child arrives 2 years later, a daughter we name Hope, and I think my father would be proud to know his granddaughter's first bedtime stories are poems I write specifically for her, words that belong to our family alone. When I hold my published book for the first time, Authentic Voices printed in elegant type with my name on the cover, I think about the scared 18-year-old who almost gave away his future for a few grateful smiles from someone who never deserved his talent. This time, my words belong to me.